Okay, so the title of this talk is Approaching the Buddhist Path, and it was taken from the title of this book, which is the first volume of a series called The Library of Wisdom and Compassion by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And he asked me to be a co-author. I wanted to be simply the editor, but he insisted on that I'm a co-author. So the series of books is designed to be like the Dalai Lama's major English work, going from the beginning of the path to the end of the path. I had no thought to do this kind of work. What happened was maybe around 95, 96, I went to see His Holiness, and I asked him to write a short root text that then the Tibetan masters could use when teaching people who didn't grow up Buddhist. Okay. And His Holiness said, "Oh, that's a very good idea, but first we should write the very long version." And he gave me a manuscript. Well, he didn't say very long. He just said, a complete thing. And he gave me a manuscript to edit. And so I worked on that. And then it takes a long time to get an appointment to see His Holiness. So I finished that, working with that transcript, and then I added more material to it, because I was waiting for another appointment, and had that appointment, and then got some more instruction and asked more questions, and came back and added more material, and then pretty soon, before I knew it, it was over 2,000 typewritten pages. And then His Holiness said, "Oh, well, this book or books shouldn't be just the normal kind of stages of the path book. We should include information about other Buddhist traditions as well." And so then he sent me out to learn about the Pali tradition and about the Chinese tradition. We couldn't do all the Buddhist traditions, so we just added those two. And learn that material and bring it back. So I went to Thailand. I stayed at Wat Marjan for about 2 weeks and received teachings from Ajahn Nanan there. It was a very interesting experience. I don't know that they had ever seen bhikkhunis there before, especially ones from the Tibetan tradition. They didn't quite know what to do with me. Yeah, because they couldn't put me with the monks, and they couldn't put me with the lay people. So I sat somewhere in between on something that was somewhere in between. Yeah. But it was a wonderful experience, and Ajahn was very generous with his time and answering questions. And then I also had a long-standing relationship with Chinese Buddhism because I took my bhikshuni ordination there, because in the Tibetan tradition they don't have the lineage for the full ordination. It never spread there when they brought Buddhism. And then, slowly putting the material together. And so this was the first volume. 3 volumes are published so far. The 4th volume comes out in October, November. The 5th volume, I'm turning in the manuscript at the end of the month, and that'll take a little bit more than another year before it comes out. And on, I'm not sure how many volumes it'll be yet, probably 9 or maybe 10. So this first volume, Approaching the Buddhist Path, was a lot of the material that people who didn't grow up Buddhist, it's helpful for us to know this kind of stuff before we start on the path. Okay? Because otherwise we come in, most people raised in a Judeo-Christian religion, or even if we haven't been raised in a particular religion, from a predominantly Christian culture, and so having certain kind of ideas and ways of thinking. And then we come into Buddhism, and all of a sudden we're hearing about past and future lives and different realms of existence and all sorts of things that we never heard of before. Yeah, and we're hearing about the mind, which in the West, we really don't know what the mind is. We know a lot about the brain, but we don't know much about the mind. Yeah. You ask a scientist about the brain, lots of material. You ask them about consciousness, and they kind of pause for a while, and the most I've heard them say is it's an emergent property of the brain. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means. What is an emergent property of the brain? Okay. So there's been a lot of very fruitful discussions between Buddhists and scientists. There's the Mind and Life Institute now that has regular conferences on that theme. There's the Emory University in the US that has a project together with Tibetan monasteries, whereby the monks and now the nuns too can learn science. Yeah, and some of the people in Emory are learning more about Buddhism. So there's more of a discussion, but still the scientists are puzzled when we talk about the mind. So anyway, this volume, His Holiness, when he teaches, he doesn't, he treats the audience like we're intelligent. So he doesn't start with the easy stuff. He throws you in with the important background material of the Buddhist worldview. So he starts out talking about the nature of the mind, okay, and throws us in there. So, some of the early parts of the book talk about that. Then there's some Buddhist history in it, and then he touches on some of the important teachings that are to come in the future volumes. So what I thought to talk about today was one of those important teachings. In the Tibetan tradition, we have a genre of text called mind training, or sometimes translated thought training. The Tibetan is lojong. And it includes, these texts are usually fairly brief and concise. They're not long ones, but they're very pithy, and they contain a lot of points with a few words that can be unpacked into volumes. Anyway, one of these thought training or mind training texts is called the 8 Verses of Mind Training, and it's one of His Holiness's favorite texts, and what's one of mine as well. And one of the things that I like about the mind training texts is they're extremely practical. Yeah, they really focus on how to practice in daily life. And especially how to practice with difficult situations. Because as we all know, though we don't want dukkha, dukkha comes. Yeah, unwanted, uninvited, not in our schedule. And we have to deal with it. So these verses are very helpful for that. So I thought to speak a little bit briefly about the 8. So, and maybe read some of what His Holiness says about them. So this is in chapter 7. Okay. So I'll read a little bit and then speak a little bit, okay? So he starts this off and he says, I recite the 8 verses of mind training by Langri Tangpa, who lived in the 11th and 12th century. I recite these every day and regularly apply it to my life. When I'm delayed at an airport, I reflect on these verses. And before going into potentially difficult situations, I contemplate them as well. Okay, and so then he starts the first verse. With the thought of attaining awakening for the welfare of all beings, who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I will constantly practice holding them dear. Okay, so it's talking about all sentient beings, yeah, and holding them as more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. So in ancient Indian culture, they talked about a jewel. I don't know if anybody ever found it, but it sounded good. And if you had this jewel, anything you wished for would appear. So here it's saying that other living beings are more precious than such a wish-fulfilling jewel. Now that sounds great, doesn't it? All these sentient beings, they're so precious. You know, I'm filled with love for them. Except, and then we start with all the sentient beings that we aren't filled with love for. Okay, like your neighbor whose dog poops on your lawn and they don't clean it up. Like politicians. Mm-hmm. Like your ex-husband or ex-wife or ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. Like your cat when they claw on the sofa. Like your boss. Okay. Like your relatives who drive you crazy. And definitely like cockroaches. Yeah. We also exclude mosquitoes. Yeah. Snakes. People from the other political parties. And pretty soon, when we're done excluding all those other beings, the core of who we hold precious remains as ourself. We've eliminated everybody else because they don't meet our criteria for being perfect. Yeah. And Buddha isn't a sentient being. He's an enlightened being. So he's not in the picture either. So there remains the self, yeah, who just happens to be me and happens to be the center of the universe. Yeah. Are you the center of the universe? Yeah. You're with friends, you can be honest. Yeah, we all think we're the center of the universe. And the problem with the world is the world does not understand that we are the center of the world. And all these other sentient beings have so many wrong views, the chief of which is that they don't realize that we're the center of the universe and that they should do whatever we want. That's the biggest problem facing the world now. Because if only other living beings would do what we want them to do, we would be happy and the world would be perfect. So we have advice for everybody. Do you have advice for everybody? Yeah, some advice, for your parents. If you have kids, advice for your kids. Advice for your siblings, advice for your boss. Yeah, advice for the politicians, and especially advice for Donald Trump. Yeah, he needs a lot of advisors because most of them he either fires or they run away. So we would like to fill in as an advisor for him, wouldn't we? And give him lots of advice about how he should change. Because if only he and all the other sentient beings changed, then we would be happy. But the problem is that we have all this sage's advice for all these poor, confused sentient beings on how they should get their lives together, and they don't listen to us. Yeah. And in fact, they even tell us to mind our own business. Imagine how rude, how stupid. Yeah. But we are so compassionate that we continue to give them advice. Yeah, we don't desert them. So these sentient beings are the ones that verse 1 is saying we should hold more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. But how do we hold all these jerks precious? Yeah? Isn't that our problem? They're all jerks because they don't do what we want. And yet, here Langridampa is telling us to hold them precious, more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. How can we do that? Okay. So, one way is there's a series of meditations to do to open our hearts to see other living beings as endearing, as lovable. And those meditations focus on seeing the kindness of other living beings. Okay, so we can see the kindness of some living beings. The people who praise us are very kind. The people who agree with our ideas are kind. The people who do what we want are kind. Yeah. But the rest of the sentient beings, okay. So we have to back up a few steps here and look at kindness in a different way. And look at kindness as something that's been going on in all of our rebirths, not just this rebirth. Okay. So the kindness of friends and relatives, fairly easy to see. Okay. Most relatives, not all of them. Right? Yeah. You got to have a few that you don't speak to. But what about strangers? How are strangers kind? Well, when you think about it, okay, think of what you ate today. Did you grow any of it? Yeah. Other people grew it, didn't they? And they harvested it, and then more people transported it, and other people packaged it, and people put it on the shelves in the grocery store, and then other people worked at the checkout counter, and then there were people that made the bags that you put it in, either paper bags or plastic bags. Or are you required now to bring your own bag? Oh, that's very good. Yeah. So people who made those bags, your reusable bags. And then how did you get to the grocery store to buy the food? Well, you rode in a vehicle, probably. So where did that vehicle come from? Yeah. There were people who designed it, people who made all the different parts, and those people lived all over the world. Yeah, the parts of an automobile come from all over the world, different, I know in the States they say, some of the parts come from China, and then they go to Mexico, and then it comes back to the US, it goes back to Mexico, it comes back to the US. Our car parts, we cross many different borders before they arrive at the car lot. Yeah. And then who made the roads that we drove on to get to the grocery store, to get the food that other people made available there? Yeah, so people made the roads. Of course, they make the roads right at the time when we're driving on them. And it causes us a traffic jam. These sentient beings. Yeah, can't they work on the roads at 2:00 in the morning while I'm asleep? They should be convenient for me. Do you ever stop and thank the people who make the roads when you drive by them, when they're working out in the hot sun? Try it. Try stopping sometime and thanking them. And after we eat our meal, there's a lot of garbage. And we throw it in the garbage and put it out on the street for the garbage truck to come and get. Yeah. Have you ever thanked the people, your garbage collectors? Yeah. Has the thought ever entered your mind to thank them? I was in Tel Aviv many years ago when the garbage collectors were on strike. After one day, you really see the kindness of the garbage collectors. Because without them, any city becomes garbage very quickly. Yeah. Try thanking your garbage collector. Nobody thanks these people. No? When you go to a public restroom, try thanking the person who cleans it. Mm-hmm. When you go to a restaurant, thank the people who wash the dishes or who chop the veggies. And if you eat meat, boy, you better thank the living being who donated their body for your meal. Because would you donate your body for somebody else's meal? I don't think so. Okay, so when we look around, even we look at the room here, how many living beings were involved in making this building? And the electricity and the plumbing and everything. It all came due to the kindness of other living beings. And the building I don't know how it's supported. Maybe you pay rent, maybe you own the building, but that money came from other living beings too. Yeah, and we usually don't think of that. We just come here and walk up the stairs and sit down and yeah. But actually, when you think about it and look around, we are in debt to every living being because everybody in one way or another, through the work they do in the society, contributes to our well-being. Now, somebody's going to say, no, they don't. They just work to earn money. They don't care about me. Okay, that's because we think that only the people who think of us in particular as separated from everybody else, as only the people who see us as more precious than anybody else, only those people are the kind ones. That's not true. Because we can't live on our own. We depend on everybody else. So the bottom line is, they don't need to think of us when they work and when they do things. The bottom line is, we benefit from their labors. Because without other living beings, there's no way we could stay alive. Yeah, think about it. We feel like separate individuals who are in control. But actually, we depend on other living beings every single day just to stay alive. We can't support ourselves. Yeah. If you got dropped on a desert island or dropped in the outback or outback, or even dropped in the middle of Sydney without any money, yeah, could you support yourself? No, we're totally dependent on others. Yeah. And so contemplating this again and again and again and again really opens our heart to see other living beings as endearing, as kind. Yeah. And when we can see them in that way, then the feeling automatically comes that we in some way want to repay that kindness. Because other living beings are more precious than a wish-fulfilling gem. Now you're going to say, but, what about that cockroach? Yeah, you're telling me that cockroach is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, and that my life depends on that cockroach. Yeah? Do you have big cockroaches here or small ones? Do you have the big ones? Oh, you have both. Okay. In the U.S., our cockroaches are fairly small. I lived in Hong Kong for a while, and they had flying cockroaches. Do yours fly? Yeah? I mean, they were like big cockroaches, and you left the window open without a screen, and the cockroach would go zooming in. Yeah? And they're kinder than a wish-fulfilling jewel. What? Are you crazy for thinking like that? Well, think about it. Those living beings who are cockroaches haven't always been cockroaches. Yeah? If you think about multiple lives in cyclic existence, they say we've been everything in all the different realms of cyclic existence, from the God realm to the hell realm. Cockroaches are in between. Yeah, so we've been cockroaches, but not always. Yeah. So likewise, the cockroaches now are there due to their karma. But when that karma is exhausted, perhaps they can be reborn as human beings. Yeah. And in previous lifetimes, yeah, cockroaches, they lay eggs, right? Yeah. But still, mama cockroaches and daddy cockroach are kind to baby cockroaches. They give them life. Yeah. So in one way or another, all sentient beings have also been our parents in a previous life and been kind to us in that way. It's very interesting. Watch different species of how the parents take, especially the mother, takes care of the young. Yeah. Where I live at the Abbey, we have turkeys. Yeah, wild turkeys. And now is mating season. They're all out in the forest. It's summertime where we are. And at the end of the day, mama turkey gets all the babies somehow together. I don't know how she does that because they're all running around. And then she sits on top of them and protects them and keeps them warm, because there's also coyotes out there. Yeah. So just even like that, how mama turkey takes care of the chicks. So in the same way, in previous lifetimes we were in all sorts of different relationships with living beings. Sometimes as parent and child, sometimes, as helpers in society. And so we benefited from their kindness in many different ways. So if you contemplate this regularly, your whole view about other sentient beings changes. Yeah. And, we all have different habitual ways of looking at sentient beings. Yeah. And so sometimes some people, their way of looking at sentient beings is, are they going to help me? Or are they going to harm me? Who can I trust? Who can't I trust? Who will be kind? Who will hurt me? Yeah. And so we divide people into categories. We back away. We feel alienated. But when you really spend some time thinking about the kindness of other living beings, then when you meet people or animals or insects, you don't judge them in terms of who will help and who will harm, because your first impression is, they have all helped me. Yeah, they have all helped me. They're all kind. I don't need to be afraid of them. And that feeling of separation and alienation goes away. And then when we walk into a room full of strangers, instead of thinking, oh, will they like me? Will I fit in? We go in with a mind of, oh, maybe there's other people in here who wonder if they fit in. Yeah. I'll go talk to those people. Yeah. I'll befriend all the people, especially those who other people don't talk to let them know that they're cared for because they've been kind to me in the past. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what this verse is talking about, with the thought to attain awakening for the welfare of all beings, who are more kind than a wish-fulfilling jewel. I will constantly practice holding them dear. Okay, so we not only hold them dear, but as the first two lines say, with the thought of attaining awakening, So we strive for full awakening, for Buddhahood, because at that point, our spiritual development is such that we can really benefit others most effectively and most completely. So we may see sentient beings now as kind, but our ability to benefit is limited. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I talk a lot about compassion, but when it comes to actually helping somebody, I'm often too busy. Or somebody else should help them. Or it's, ew, I don't want to be near them. Or I sincerely want to help, but I don't know what in the world to do. I don't have any wisdom. Okay. So we begin to see that we really need to develop our own qualities so that we have the abilities to really effectively be of service to other living beings. Okay, so that becomes our motivation for our spiritual practice. Okay, that's verse 1. That verse, you could spend a long time. I just gave you an abbreviated version. Verse 2. Oh, this verse is a real doozy. Whenever I am with others, I will practice seeing myself as the lowest of all. What? And from the very depth of my heart, I will respectfully hold others as supreme. Huh? Langri Tampa must be crazy. Hold myself as the lowest of all. I'm the most important one of all. My suffering hurts more than anybody else's. My happiness is more important. And all my opinions are the right ones. Yeah. Whatever I think is right, because I would never think anything wrong. So even if I believe one thing today and change my mind and believe another thing tomorrow, both yesterday and today, I am right. Okay? And in any discussion, I have to have the last word. Okay? Any argument, I have to win. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and partway through the argument, you realize that you're wrong, but you keep arguing anyway because you've got to win? Yeah? Anybody had that experience? Oh, a few of us. The rest of you, I guess you never want to win an argument, huh? Okay. So we always are right, and we always want to win the argument. We don't want to give in. Okay. Have you ever been in the middle of saying something and then said to yourself, I need to shut up? And you keep on talking. Yeah. So that's us. So when it says, whenever I am with others, I will practice seeing myself as the lowest of all, and I will respectfully hold others as supreme. What that's doing is saying we will give up having to win every argument. We will give up always having to be right. they say in many meetings in companies that it's difficult for women to speak because the men speak over them. But when the women speak, they share ideas, and mostly the men ignore them. But then the men will come back and speak the ideas that the woman said as if they were their own ideas and take credit for them. Okay. I think they call that mansplaining. Yeah, it's a new word. Yeah. Actually, one Australian man taught me that word because he was mad because I talked about women's issues and he wanted me to talk about men's issues, like mansplaining. So I looked it up, what it meant. I said, yeah, I know that. That's happened to me. Yeah. Other women, has that happened to you? You bet. Okay, so we're well practiced seeing ourselves as the lowest of all, but not by choice. Okay, so it's a real practice, to, when we're with other people, to give them credit for their ideas, to build on ideas with other people. So we collaborate instead of letting other, working together on a team with other people and letting them do all the work. And then at the end, we come in and do the finishing touches and tell the boss that we were the ones who did most of the work on it. Okay, so we'll give up that. And we'll learn to respect other living beings. Okay. Now, I have to say, I don't know Australian culture so well, but in where I come from, this verse is totally un-American. Yeah. As a country, we are never wrong. Yeah. You ever heard Donald Trump admit that he's wrong? Yeah. It makes them for the most fascinating news in the country, because he'll say one thing one day, and the next day he'll say the opposite. Yeah. Really fascinating. It's like a total circus in the country right now. Yeah, but not, I think, with elephants and donkeys. Yeah. Country's really like a circus. So anyway, these are verses. I have this dream, of one day teaching the Dharma to the U.S. Congress. Yeah. Do you feel that way about your politicians? Yeah, that they could use some Dharma education? Yeah. Achan was, Achan was saying that you have climate deniers here. Yeah. Yeah, we have plenty of them where we come from too. Okay. So, but still, even though we may have different ideas than other people, still learning to respect them. Yeah. Treat them like human beings. Okay, verse 3. In all actions, I will examine my mind, and the moment an affliction arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly confront and avert it. Okay, so when afflictions arise, so we have the 3 poisonous afflictions, confusion, attachment, and anger. And then we have all the subsidiary afflictions, the root afflictions, the auxiliary or secondary afflictions, 84,000 of them we have. Huh? You ask His Holiness, why 84,000? I asked him once, why in the intermediate state there were 49 days. Yeah. So it's comparable to why are there 84,000 afflictions? Because 83,000 is too little and 85,000 is too many. Yeah, good answer. Okay, so we have all these afflictions. So the moment they arise, to see them as endangering myself and others. Okay, so my afflictions endanger others because motivated by them, I kill, steal, lie, blame others. Yeah, the 10 non-virtues. Yeah, we do all 10 of them. Well, I don't know about you, but I've in the past done all 10. Yeah, motivated by afflictive minds, but not even recognizing that what I'm doing is non-virtuous and not recognizing that my motivations have been afflictions. Yeah, mental states that are not beneficial and also not realistic. They're distorted mental states, and yet we believe that they're true and we follow them. So this verse is saying, we need to be more attentive, our introspective alertness, samprajana, needs to be more astute so that when these things arise, we notice them, and then we need more conscientiousness to really not just notice them, but then counteract them. So then we also need to know the antidotes, how to think to counteract the different afflictions when they arise. Yeah, so we're always going to examine our mind. When afflictions arise, notice them. Yeah, apply the antidotes so that we don't harm others and so that we don't harm ourselves either. Because when we act out of afflictive mental states, not only do we damage others, but we create destructive karma ourselves, and then the seeds of our destructive actions ripen later on when conducive conditions are present, and then we experience all different sorts of dukkha as a result of them. So harming others, when we harm others, we also harm ourselves. Yeah, we usually think in different actions that if I benefit somebody else, then I lose out. And if I harm them, then I win the argument. I get the best thing. But when you understand karma, we realize that when we harm others, we're harming ourselves. It's not different. Yeah. When we benefit others with a kind motivation, we're also benefiting ourselves. Those go together. Okay, so here, just really, you can see why His Holiness reads this or recites it at the beginning of every day. To remind ourselves every day to notice the afflictions and then to counteract them. Very important. Not just to notice the afflictions and then say, oh, I am mindful that my anger is arising. Yeah. I am mindful that my arm is lifting and my fist is clenched. I am mindful that I'm pulling my arm back. I am mindful of smacking that guy in the face. Yeah, so I practice mindfulness. Yeah, so that's not what this verse is talking about. Okay. Verse 4. Whenever I meet a person of bad nature who is overwhelmed by negative energy and intense suffering, I will hold such a rare one dear as if I had found a precious treasure. Okay, so think of somebody that you've come in contact with or that influences your life who has a bad nature. Yeah, argumentative, selfish, overwhelmed by negative energy, always cranky, grumbling, lashing out at other people. Or people with intense suffering. Okay, just think of somebody like that. And then think, I will hold such a rare one dear as if I had found a precious treasure. Does your mind go, this is crazy? Yeah. So this is, he's teaching us the antidotes when we encounter people like that. So the antidotes, of course, are the opposite to what we want to do. We meet somebody who has negative energy and intense suffering, and we want to get away from them ASAP. Yeah? And Lungri Tumpa is saying, to hold such a rare one dear as if we had found a precious treasure. So, how do you think of them as a precious treasure? Those people are teaching us something about ourselves. They're showing us. They're like a mirror in which we can see the state of our mind. Yeah, when we're around people with negative energy, we develop negative energy towards them, don't we? Yeah. When we're around people who have intense suffering, people who complain all the time because of the mental suffering, or people who are dreadfully ill that we have to go see in the hospital, but we really don't want to because it's so scary to go to the hospital for us. Yeah, these people are showing us something about our own mind, our own limitations. Yeah. And so it's only by seeing our lack of compassion and our limitations that we then know what we need to work on in order to develop the antidotes, the opposite qualities to those limitations. Okay? So these people clearly show us where we go, Yeah. So some of us, we really can't endure being around people who are emotionally distressed. Yeah, we freak out. We don't want to be around people who are emotionally distressed. Others of us, we don't want to be around people who are physically ill. It's very scary because that might happen to us. Not might, but will, unless we die first. Okay? So when we encounter those people, it's actually incredible opportunity to see our limitations and then to work at stretching our boundaries. Yeah. To work so that we don't see people who are really ill as scary. Yeah. So that we don't see people who are dying as frightening, but look at them and pay attention to their suffering and have compassion for them, instead of falling into personal distress where we can't endure seeing others suffering. Yeah. and to see these people who are so difficult to get along with, as again giving us the opportunity to change our way of thinking and practice finding a way to talk to these people about something that is of mutual interest instead of just dismissing them. You know what really drives me crazy? I'm telling you so you don't do this. But maybe it drives you crazy too. Is people who come and ask for advice, and when you give them advice, they respond with 2 words. Yes, but. And then they ask for advice, and you give them more advice. And they again respond, yes, but. Yeah, do you know people like that? Yeah? Are you a person like that? You ask for advice, but whenever somebody gives it, you explain why you can't follow it? Yes, sounds good, but there's no way I can do that. Okay? So, those are the people that drive me crazy. Yeah, because what I used to do is I used to keep offering more advice. Yeah. And finally it hit me like, they get 2 yes buts, and after that, no more advice. Yeah. I don't even give them 3's a charm. 2 yes buts. And then I say, what are your ideas to solve your problem? Yeah. Because my ideas aren't helping them. So what ideas do they have for solving their problem? Okay. So that's how I've learned. I don't know if I really see them as a precious treasure, but I've learned not to get so irritated. Okay. Yeah. How are you with grumpy people? Yeah. Do you have somebody in your family or somebody you live with who is grumpy in the morning, or grumpy in the evening, or grumpy in the middle of the day? Yeah. And you just dismiss that person as, they're grumpy? Or do you try and, think of that person as suffering? Yeah. What kind of suffering do they have that they're in a bad mood so often? Yeah. And can you find a way to relate to them when they're in a bad mood, instead of just doing the same things you usually do so that they do the same things as they usually do? Yeah. Try changing your dynamic, and then they have to change too. Yeah. So especially at family dinners, where everybody goes back to playing the same role. Does that happen at your family dinners? Yeah. One brother or sister that you've competed with since you were this big. Then as adults, you're competing again, or, some other member of the family. People just have these habitual ways of interacting, and it doesn't work, but they keep doing it. Couples often have the same argument again and again, and they bicker with each other. But if one person changes how they act, then the other person can't continue doing what they're doing. Yeah. So if you have some relative at a family dinner that complains about some aspect of you, Yeah. Try saying, yeah, I do have that fault. It's a conversation stopper. That they won't say anything more than that. Yeah. One time my mom was, complaining something about me. Yeah. On and on and on, And usually the dynamic is, mom complains and then I try and explain how I get defensive and explain this and that and the other thing. And this time she was complaining about something I did, and I just said, Mom, it's really too bad you have a stupid daughter. Yeah? Then we went on to a new topic of conversation. What could she say after that? Yeah? So. Verse 5. Oh, it's another doozy. When others out of jealousy, okay, somebody's jealous of you, maybe you kind of wanted to make them jealous. Do you sometimes want to make people jealous of you? Nobody's raising their hands. So when others out of jealousy mistreat me with abuse, slander, and so on. Because when people are jealous of us, they're not very nice. I will practice accepting defeat and offering the victory to them. Are you kidding? Yeah. Somebody who mistreats me with abuse, slander, and so on, I will practice accepting defeat and offering the victory to them. Okay, so I have to clarify something here. When it's saying that somebody, mistreats me with abuse, this does not mean that you let somebody abuse you. Okay. It can depend on what kind of abuse it is. Sometimes somebody is venting and you happen to be the person that they bump into first. And so they vent and dump their anger on you. Sometimes, you can just stand there and let them do that. Yeah. They get their anger out. And then maybe you can help them. Reflect back to them their feelings, their needs. That can help calm them down. Yeah. When somebody is, when the abuse is really getting to you, yeah, or when somebody's physically abusing you, yeah, you can definitely stop it. So it's not saying let yourself be abused. It's not saying make yourself into a victim. But it's saying when others are jealous, yeah, and they want to harm us so that we don't have things that they want, yeah, instead of engaging in an argument with them and fighting back and screaming and creating a commotion, sometimes we can just say, we can give the victory to them and say, you have these qualities too, or you can have this possession, or, whatever it is. Let me give you another example that can maybe help. Guys in prison, when it's time, I do prison work, so when it's time for meals, they have to line up to go into the chow hall. And that can be a very fraught time because sometimes the bullies go and they cut in front of you, yeah, just to see what you're going to do and to prove that they're, big and strong, and it's a challenge. Yeah, you cut in front of somebody in the chow line, and that's like challenging them. And the guys really, they get, so mad when somebody cuts in front of them. Kind of like people on the outside when somebody cuts you off on the highway. Yeah, any of you suffer from road rage? Oh, only 3 people. Really? Yeah, what do you do when somebody cuts you off on the highway? Yeah? Do you give them the finger? Do you swear at them? Or do you say, please, go? So in the prison, when the guys ask me about this, I say, let the guy go in front of you in the chow line. And they say, what? Yeah, if I let him go, that's a sign of weakness on my part. And then he's going to beat me up later, if not right at that moment. And I say, there's different ways of doing that. There's getting afraid of somebody and shaking inside and then saying, yeah, okay, go in front. And there's a way of being confident and gracious and saying, yes, please go ahead. So the words and the actions are the same. The way you execute it is different because it's coming from a different mental state. If you show that you're afraid, the bullies feed on that. Yeah. But if in your heart you really are sincere and you say, sure, go ahead. Yeah. Then they react very differently because you're acting with your own dignity. You're acting with self-confidence, not out of fear. Okay. So when it says, I will practice accepting defeat and offering the victory to them, yeah, you let them go first. Somebody's trying to change lanes. You let them go first. Somebody cuts you off. Instead of thinking that they're doing it deliberately and you got to get even with them, yeah, realize that they may be in an emergency situation and need to get somewhere, or they may not have looked in their rearview mirror very well. Yeah. But I don't think most people really mean to cut somebody off on the highway. Okay. I was talking about this one time, and one young man told me a story from his life. He was driving on the highway and with his fiancée. She was in the passenger seat. And so, okay, I got to tell this. You drive on the wrong side of the street here. So if you're driving on the left side, you see, because I drive on the right side, and people who don't do what I do drive on the wrong side. Yeah. Of course, you think that we drive on the wrong side, but that shows that you're wrong. So you're driving down, he was driving down the highway and with his fiancée, he was in this lane, okay? And, or no, he was, what was it? He was, somewhere. Yeah, he wasn't in the far right lane. He was like over. And some guy comes like this and then cuts him off, okay? And he got so mad that, the other guy sped ahead and he put his foot on the gas and sped after the other guy. And then he deliberately cut the other guy off. So the other guy's here he comes and cuts that guy off. And in doing so, he lost control of the car, went across 4 lanes of the highway, and wound up almost in a ditch before the car stopped. And by that time, he was shaking, and he realized that he almost killed his fiancée. Okay? So it would have been better to accept to accept defeat and offer the victory to someone else when that happens. But that would have been much wiser. Okay, so that's the kind of thing this verse is saying. Okay. Verse 6. When someone I have benefited and in whom I have placed great trust hurts me very badly, I will see that person as my supreme teacher. You ever had someone betray your trust? Yeah? I think everybody's had that. Is there anybody who has never had someone betray their trust? Okay. How many of you have betrayed others' trust? Very interesting. More people have had their trust be betrayed than who have betrayed other people's trust. Interesting. So I wonder who in the world actually betrays other people's trust, because it's certainly none of us. And yet our trust is betrayed a lot. Okay, so this person, who hurts us very badly by betraying our trust, the recommendation is to see them as our supreme teacher. Okay. So actually these people teach us a lot, the people who betray our trust. They teach us often that we don't know how to evaluate people properly when we give trust to them. They teach us that we often have unrealistic expectations of other people and expect them to be perfect. They teach us that we don't give others any room to slip up or for them to have obstacles in their life or suffering in their life. Okay, so these people really teach us a lot. Yeah. So when situations happen like that, when somebody betrays our trust, it's really time to sit and think, what was my part of this situation? Not blaming ourselves, not blaming them, but realizing that any situation, everybody contributes to it. So what did I contribute to creating a situation whereby somebody betrayed my trust? Was I expecting too much of someone? Did I go in with all kinds of assumptions about the relationship and how that person would be, but I never told the other person what my assumptions were, or rather what my rules were, how they should behave? I never okayed with them. I went in with the thought that they should meet every need I have and be incredibly attuned to what I feel and meet all my needs. And they didn't. But I never asked them, would you always meet my needs? Okay. I just assumed that they would. If somebody came to you and said, will you always meet my needs? What would you say? Forget it, I can't do that. Don't expect that of me. But we expect that of other people. And we don't even let them know. And when we have needs, we don't tell them. We expect them to intuit our needs, to read our mind and fulfill our needs without us having to say something. Yeah. And then when they don't do that, we say, they betrayed my trust. But maybe we had something to do with it. You think? Verse 7. In short, I will offer directly and indirectly every benefit and happiness to all beings, my mothers. I will practice in secret, taking upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. Okay? So, in short, in summary, I will offer directly and indirectly every benefit and happiness to others. And I will practice in secret, taking upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. Our usual attitude is, when there's happiness, I'll take it. When there's suffering, you can have it. This verse is the total opposite. When there's suffering, I'll take it. When there's happiness, I give it. Okay? So this refers to a meditation called the taking and giving meditation, where we imagine taking on others' suffering voluntarily with compassion, and imagine their suffering becoming like a thunderbolt that hits the rock of our own self-grasping, our own ignorance, our own selfishness and self-preoccupation at our heart, and demolishes it. And then we imagine giving our body possessions and even our merit to them so that they can have happiness. So we use what other beings don't want, which is their suffering. We imagine taking it, but it transforms into that thunderbolt that will destroy the cause of our own suffering, our own self-grasping ignorance, our own self-centered thought. And then we imagine our body, wealth, and merit as whatever other living beings need, and give that to them with love. Yeah, meaning with no strings attached. So this is a meditation that you do in your imagination. It's very, very powerful. And it helps us to generate very strong love and compassion, so that when we actually meet situations where we can be of benefit, we don't hesitate. Okay. So there's a long description to this meditation. If you want to learn it in more detail, there's some explanation on my website. But the best book about this is a book by one of my teachers. The book is called Transforming Adversity into Joy and Courage. Okay, chapter 11, excellent explanation of this meditation. And then the last verse, verse 8. Without these practices being defiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, I will practice without grasping to release all beings from the bondage of the disturbing, unsubdued mind and karma. Okay, so we're going to do the preceding practices, yeah, with a thought, with a motivation that is free from the 8 worldly concerns. You know the 8 worldly concerns? Yeah. Don't. Buddhaghosa speaks about them. Yeah. They're very important. We know them very well. We just don't know that they're called the 8 worldly concerns. Okay. So they come in four pairs. One pair is being delighted when we get material possessions and money, and being dismayed when we don't, or when it gets taken away from us. Huh? Do you have those two? Okay. Second pair, being delighted when we get praised and when people approve of us, and being really bummed out when they criticize us and disapprove of us. Do you have those two? Mm-hmm. Then the third pair, loving to have a good reputation and being dismayed when we have a bad one. You have those two? Mm-hmm. Then the last pair, yeah, loving, seeking, craving good sensory experiences. See, hear, taste, touch, feel, nice things. And really hating bad sensory experiences. Do you have those two? Okay. So that's how we ordinary beings in the desire realm live. Yeah. We're totally immersed in objects of the senses all the time. And our mind goes up and down like a yo-yo according to whether we encounter something pleasing or displeasing. So all day long, if you look, emotionally, we're really like yo-yos. You know that toy? You have that toy here? Okay. So what it's saying is we're going to do these practices without those 8 worldly concerns intervening. So we're not going to try and cultivate love and compassion, yeah, and let people know how much love and compassion we have for them. Okay? We're not going to dampen our arrogance and be the lowest of all and let it be. But we're going to tell other people how great we are because we sacrificed for them. Okay? So, saying we're going to do these practices with sincerity. Yeah, with sincere love, sincere compassion for the benefit of others. And what will help us do it, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory. I will practice without grasping to release all beings from the bondage of the disturbing, unsubdued mind and karma. So we're going to, with an awareness of selflessness, of emptiness, we're not going to grasp on to ourselves, to others, to phenomena as inherently existing. Yeah, but we're going to see them as like illusions in that they appear one way, but their actual way of being is selfless, is empty. And with that kind of awareness, then we're really going to work to help other beings to overcome their disturbing, unsubdued mind and their polluted karma, and to attain liberation, attain full awakening. Okay, so that's the 8 verses. Powerful, huh? Okay. Okay, so lots more actually to say, but I wanted to share that. So we have a few minutes for questions and comments. This is your chance to ask. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciate your honesty and your humor. But as soon as the topic came to mind, the verse 6 about abusing trust. So when I hear these words abusing trust, I often think about child abuse and sexual abuse, and that the people would hear that they might have somehow done something to create that, to go to victim blaming. As a spiritual person, how would you respond to those
Okay. So how I would respond would depend whether that person was a Buddhist and had very deep conviction in the law of karma, or whether that person was not a Buddhist, or even was a Buddhist but didn't have strong conviction in the law of karma and its effects. Okay? So in terms of child abuse, yeah, our somebody's trust was abused, was taken advantage of. Yeah. But then the question remains, are you going to create an identity of I was abused as a child, therefore I have this problem and this problem and this problem? Or I was abused as a child, and so I don't trust other people, or I'm sensitive to loud noises, or this, that, and the other thing. What I'm getting at is we've all had past experiences that have adversely influenced us. And we can make an identity as having been the person who was the victim, and really solidify that a victim, that identity, and present ourselves as a person who has that identity as a victim. And when we do that, we put ourselves in prison. Because if somebody abused us, they did it for a certain period of time. It's no longer happening. But when we remember it again and again, and we develop an identity about the person who's experienced this again and again, then every time we do that, it's as if our own mind is re-traumatizing ourselves. Okay? So at some point, the antidote is to say, I'm going to put that down. Yeah, I was a kid. I had no filter. I didn't understand what was going on. Yeah, I was hurt. But that's not who I am. That is not who I am. I have other qualities. And my life doesn't have to be defined by the abuse I experienced. Okay? So it's refusing to be a victim, basically. Yeah. At one of the Mind Life conferences, with scientists and the Dalai Lama, it came up like the traumatizing of the Tibetans who remained in Tibet after the Chinese communists had taken over the country, and imprisoned many of those people and tortured many of them. And yet when those people escaped and got to India, to the refugee community, only a small percentage of them had PTSD. Yeah. And all the scientists were going, what? What? They experienced all that and they don't have PTSD? And there was a discussion after that, and you could really see that these people, because of their training in Buddhism, and because of their faith, because of their understanding of the law of cause and effect, because of whatever level of compassion they had developed in their practice, this had really helped them during those very trying situations so that they came out without PTSD. So, the point is to not let adverse experiences define our life and confine and limit who we can be. Okay? And to not get into this thing of blaming the perpetrator. Yeah. Because if you really look in the case of child abuse, somebody who abuses a child, sexually, physically, emotionally, is that person happy? Somebody who thinks that by abusing a child, that will make them happy, is that person thinking clearly? No, that person's in a state of incredible mental suffering and incredible ignorance. And they've just created a ton of destructive karma that they will be experiencing the result of in future lives. So can we have some compassion for that person? Yes, we've suffered through it. That's true. But they were also suffering. And compassion helps us heal from our own suffering. Okay? Compassion is really a great healer. So it takes a lot of work on ourselves to get ourselves to that point. But it can be very, very helpful. One time, there was a monk when I lived in Seattle. He had been imprisoned for, 20, 30 years in Tibet, quite a long time. And then released, he came out to the West. His name was Peldon Gyatso. He wrote a book about his experience. And he spoke at our Dharma Center. The only time we could find for him to speak was like at 6:00 in the morning before people went to work, because it was an impromptu talk. So he spoke, and then afterwards, I went to fix breakfast. And as I was fixing breakfast, I noticed in the little room where we would eat, there was a picture of Chenrezig on one wall and a picture of the Dalai Lama on the other wall. And the entire time I was cooking, he was looking at one of those two pictures. His eyes were completely focused on either Chenrezig, the Buddha of Compassion, Kuan Yin, or on the Dalai Lama. And it really struck me, his faith in them was what allowed him to go through all those years of imprisonment and torture. So he was a pretty exceptional individual. Not famous at all, but a real practitioner. Does that answer your question okay? Anybody else? Okay, then let's sit for a minute and think about what you heard so that you can take some aspect of it home with you and think about it some more and actually put it into practice in your life. So this is just very short meditation, just to recall that. And then let's dedicate the merit for the awakening of each and every living being. We can chant a verse in English, and then you can do one in Pali, or English as you prefer. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then one volume was already here. It's just, this belonged to the library. And so I brought a volume too. So it can either go for the library here, or if you have another center or temple or monastery, donate, give it to the library there. Okay, so I'll leave it here. Okay. Good night. Thank you.